lighting up the entire arena and tearing into the ground as it travels toward Lin Feng. But before the fireball hits, Lin Feng rushes toward it without slowing down at all. His green energy splits the explosion apart, creating a path straight through the flames, shaking the arena and sending debris flying everywhere. Dust and flames rise in a huge explosion. Lin Feng leaps forward with power exploding from his body. Green light surrounds his fist as he jumps at Ai Ling. He shouts one line as he throws his punch, telling her to take his serious punch. His fist, glowing with pure green energy, drives forward toward Ai Ling with force great enough to shake the arena. Ai Ling's eyes widen in shock as her head jerks back from the blow. She gasps loudly, stunned by how strong the punch is. She shouts in disbelief, saying that the power he released is incredible. But right before hitting her, Lin Feng stops. He lands gracefully and smiles at her. His expression is calm and relaxed, as if the fight had never been difficult for him. He tells her softly that she let him win. In the audience, the students stare at him with their mouths open. One of them shouts that Lin Feng, the farmer, must have been hiding his true strength all along. Another student compares himself to Lin Feng and says that he is the one who looks like a farmer now. That woman with bright green eyes watches with excitement. She points out that Lin Feng's control over the power of nature is extremely rare. She says he commands it as easily as moving a finger, and that his mastery is close to the very origin of nature's power. Then Lin Feng stretches his hand toward Ai Ling, as the announcement rings out clearly. The winner is Lin Feng. After the match ends, Ai Ling stands with Lin Feng's help, her cheeks flushed. She gently holds his hand and looks up at him with admiration. She tells him that he is strong and that she accepts her defeat completely. Lin Feng looks down at her calmly. He tells her that she is the one who is truly strong, and that he only has a lot of physical strength, nothing more. After saying that, Lin Feng lets out a sigh of relief while sweating nervously. In his mind, he mutters that he almost had his land taken away, and that things were dangerously close. Suddenly, the principal appears behind him in a cheerful tone. The principal pats Lin Feng proudly on the back and says that he did well. This is how he should be acting. Lin Feng bows his head slightly and thanks the principal for showing mercy during the evaluation. The principal waves his hand and tells him to keep working hard. He says he is looking forward to watching Lin Feng grow stronger. As the principal walks away, a mischievous smile forms on Lin Feng's face. In his mind, he grumbles that the old man dared to threaten him with his land. He quietly tells the principal to just wait. As Lin Feng walks away from the training grounds, he mutters under his breath with an annoyed expression. Behind him, that green-eyed woman walks toward a tree. Lin Feng rubs the back of his neck, deep in thought. Behind him, the woman moves behind the tree, and suddenly there is an explosion of white fog. The next second, the woman comes out with a new appearance. She then approaches Lin Feng. She turned into a girl with long green hair. She wore a green dress, and her bright green eyes sparkled with excitement. She stopped in front of Lin Feng, and with a cheerful smile, she called out to him. She asked student Lin Feng to please guide her in her cultivation. Lin Feng froze for a moment. His hand rested on his chin, and his eyes widened in confusion. He stared at her, as if he had misheard. He asked her if she was okay, and wondered out loud why a combat class student would ask a farmer like him for guidance. The girl quickly introduced herself. She said her name was Vera, and that they had never met before. She explained that she had just watched his entire match. She spoke passionately. She said his use of natural mana was unbelievable, simple, perfect, and filled with life and strength. She admitted she had never seen anyone command the power of nature the way he did. Her bright eyes softened as she confessed something more personal. Vera said she had been stuck at her current cultivation realm for a long time. She believed that observing Lin Feng's path might give her the inspiration she needed. Hearing that, Lin Feng scratched the back of his head awkwardly. His eyes were wide and confused as he looked at the green-haired girl. He asked her if she was also a nature-type student. He explained that the nature-type instructors were still away on the battlefield and suggested she wait a little longer. He added honestly that he only knew how to farm. Vera held her hands together and spoke with seriousness. She said that the skilled were the true teachers. She did not expect him to formally accept her as a disciple. She only hoped to occasionally visit his fields to observe and learn. She bowed deeply toward him, almost pleading. She said even if she could only help with random small tasks, just being near his natural aura would be enough for her. She begged him to allow it. Lin Feng flinched and panicked internally. But in his mind, he repeated that he couldn't let people know what he was growing in his fields. It was too dangerous, and it would be too easy for his secret to be exposed. He turned his head slightly and spoke with calm politeness. He apologized and said that, as a farmer, he had nothing he could teach her. He insisted that he only had a lot of physical strength and was not good at fighting. But before he could say more, the principal suddenly appeared beside him, placing an arm around his shoulder. The principal leaned in and whispered that since Vera was begging like this, Lin Feng should just agree for his sake. Lin Feng stared at the principal in shock. The principal brought his mouth close to Lin Feng's ear and whispered a long string of censored words, clearly explaining something privately. Lin Feng slowly responded that whatever the principal had just said sounded not very good. His expression showed immediate hesitation and worry. After hearing the principal's whispered advice, Lin Feng's expression softened. He let out a small sigh and then agreed. He said that if things were like this, then it was settled. Hearing him, Vera's face lit up instantly. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she thanked him excitedly. She promised she would never disturb him and spoke his name with sincere gratitude. Unable to hold back her excitement, she suddenly rushed toward him and hugged his arm tightly. She asked in a stuttering voice if she could visit tomorrow or no, even right now. Lin Feng looked to the side, embarrassed, but answered calmly. He said it depended on her, and explained that his land was on the west side of the city. Soon after, they arrived at the West City training wasteland, just outside his greenhouse. Vera, now in work-style clothes, moved around energetically. She asked if there was anything she could help with. Lin Feng watched her quietly, and thought to himself that at least her attitude was very serious. But he also reminded himself that he could never let her see the crops growing inside his greenhouse. Trying to keep her busy, he pointed outward and told her to look around outside for now and get familiar with the place. He explained that he was currently giving some special attention to the newly bred seedlings. Vera turned her gaze toward the greenhouse. Her eyes widened slightly, as if sensing something unusual. A thought rose in her mind. These crops seemed extraordinary. She observed the fields in front of her, and realized something shocking. She thought that the crops here had been nourished entirely by pure natural manna. These were high-grade plants, capable of giving temporary attribute boosts. As she stood there in awe, Lin Feng walked further into the greenhouse area, his back facing her, completely unaware of the amazement spreading across her face. Vera leaned forward slightly. A soft smile formed on her face as she looked at Lin Feng's plants and said that Lin Feng was making her more and more curious. Then, 1 hour later, Lin Feng returned, but Vera was still on the ground outside the greenhouse, carefully examining the soil and plants. Suddenly, her eyes widened. She lifted a small piece of soil to her face, staring at it in shock. Her expression tightened with disbelief, and she whispered that it was unbelievable. Lin Feng walked toward her from behind. He looked down at her calmly and asked if there was a problem. Vera stood up halfway and looked up at him, still stunned. She asked him whether the crops here were really grown using only this very ordinary soil. Lin Feng nodded and confirmed it. He said that yes, it was just normal soil. Vera looked even more confused. She asked again, making sure there was no mana crystal powder, no elemental loam. Lin Feng scratched the back of his head and gave her an easy smile. He explained that he had thought about using those fertilizers, but anything infused with mana was far too expensive. With the little money he had, there was no way he could afford them. Lin Feng pointed at a small, wilted plant beside him. Its leaves were curled and dry under the sunlight. He calmly explained that these plants were probably malnourished. Vera looked at the weak crop, her green eyes narrowing in thought. A quiet inner voice rose in her mind. She noted that Lin Feng's natural mana was extremely powerful, far stronger than normal. If that was the case, she wondered if she could help him somehow. A moment later, she straightened her posture and spoke with a polite smile. She told Lin Feng that the school actually had a special rule. Students could exchange materials dropped in dungeons for certain items at the academy warehouse. Lin Feng immediately stepped closer, grabbing her shoulders in excitement. His face lit up with hope as he asked her if what she said was really true. Vera nodded and continued explaining. She gave an example. In Storm Academy's level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, the final boss, the Shadowfall Kobold Chieftain, sometimes dropped an item called the Chieftain's Fang. She said that this fang could be exchanged for a bottle of Earth Pulse, a rare nurturing resource. She lowered her voice slightly and added that level 10 dungeons were very difficult. Usually they needed around 5 people to clear safely. Then she admitted that what she said was indeed true, but also mentioned that this regulation would soon be cancelled by the academy. Hearing that, Lin Feng's eyes lit up with excitement. A bold smile spread across his face as he clenched his hand into a fist. He said loudly that this was great, and announced that he was going right now. Vera watched him dash away with surprising speed, a hoe in his hand. As she looked at his back, she wondered quietly, if only someone with such a pure and simple heart could create such pure natural mana. Soon after, Lin Feng arrived at a massive tree-like structure. At its base, a swirling blue-purple portal glowed brightly, the entrance to the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest. 2 academy supervisors stood guard in front of it. A group of students standing nearby noticed Lin Feng running toward the portal. One of them pointed at him in confusion. He asked why a farmer was coming here, and guessed that Lin Feng must have gone to the wrong place. Another student laughed loudly, mocking the hoe in Lin Feng's hand, and joking that he must want to dig up wild vegetables inside the dungeon. Someone recognized him. He said it was Lin Feng, the freshman, and remembered that he was only level 8. Shock spread among them as they wondered if Lin Feng was crazy for coming to a level 10 dungeon alone. Ignoring the comments, Lin Feng approached the supervisors respectfully. He handed them a form and said he wanted to apply for a solo entry into Gloom Forest. One supervisor took the paper and read it. His face tightened with concern. He explained that Lin Feng's level was too low, and that entering the dungeon alone carried extremely high risk. Lin Feng held up the form with a bright smile on his face. He said that according to the academy regulations, any student of the academy had the right to apply for dungeon entry. He politely asked the supervisor to allow it. As he said that, Vera appeared behind him. The supervisor stared at her in shock. His eyes widened as he immediately recognized her. Before he could say more, Vera quickly stepped forward. She put her finger to her lips and told him to stay quiet, signaling him not to reveal anything. The supervisor then took a breath and corrected his posture. He acknowledged that the regulations were indeed true. He wished Lin Feng good luck and told him to act within his ability. He warned that if Lin Feng couldn't win against the dungeon monsters, he must retreat immediately. Then Lin Feng walked toward the entrance area. A group of older students watched him move forward. One of them frowned and asked if Lin Feng was actually an idiot. They whispered among themselves, saying he was nothing more than newly recruited cannon fodder. They insisted he couldn't compare to elite students like them. Another student looked toward the glowing dungeon portal and spoke with cold amusement. He said that it would be better if Lin Feng died inside. Having such a useless junior, he muttered, only brought embarrassment to their extraordinary academy. Then, inside the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, a pack of blue wolf-like monsters rushed forward. Their red eyes glowed fiercely as they lunged toward the intruder. Lin Feng stood calmly in front of them. He called out to his undead companions, telling Hei Qi and Yu Ye to clear the way. He ordered the others to follow behind and push straight through so they could finish the dungeon quickly. A flash of bright blue light burst ahead. Hei Qi, covered in glowing markings and swirling energy, charged into the monsters. His figure moved like lightning as he captured all the wolves and water bubbles. Behind him, Yu Ye appeared in dark armor, his body surrounded by a black aura. He swung his weapon fiercely as the wolves threw themselves at him, but none of them could slow him down. Soon, their bodies fell to the ground.